Aaron Shaver.
Brian Quick.
How's it going? You back from the great north?
I am. I have returned to my other undisclosed location, the one where I reside permanently.
The permanent bunker. That's excellent.
You know, I do have a bunker here too.
Yeah,
it's more of a speakeasy. Let's call it.
I've seen the bunker, the nuclear fallout shelter signs and whatnot.
It's a luxury bunker.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So we had a lot of response to our ransomware discussion last week. A lot of positive vibes. A lot of interest and discussion. So, I figure why not go ahead and ruin a good thing, and we'll do part 2 on the ransomware topic today.
Typically when people comment on the things I do, they're like, that was really bad. But we got a positive one, so we need to add to it until people feel poorly about it. Right. So let's do that.
That sounds good. Short intro or long intro?
Let's do a short intro.
Let's do short intro. Okay, here we go. Boom.
I like that. Yeah, you put some work into that, didn't you?
Not really.
It's good. I like it.
Cool. All right. Well, so here we go.
You can't just jump right in like that.
No, okay. How should I jump right in then?
We gotta give a little bit of context.
Yeah. So here's the context. We talked last time. There was this document released by CERTNZ New Zealand, the Computer Emergency Response Team inside of New Zealand, where they talked about the life cycle of ransomware, and we talked through last time, what are the major components of a ransomware attack, and to get a little more specific about what are the precursors, what are the what are the open doors that those bad guys walk through to accomplish ransomware. What are the end goals that they're after immediately before they kick off their ransomware, the actual ransomware campaign, and all those things. And so we looked through it, and then we did that.
And we really talked about like
this document,
what it is, and kind of how this like maps out. And I think, all right, the questions that we got were like, so what do we do about it?
Yeah.
Like, can you please dig into these areas a little bit more?
Yeah, I like to call it the "so what, now what" question.
Mm-hmm.
And so definitely, I think we did an adequate job in our 30 minutes of walking through the individual components. But I thought it'd be worthwhile. I had the notes last time. If we had time, we were never going to have time. But I had the notes together to talk through. Knowing that this is how the vast majority, this is the pattern, this is the recipe or cookbook for ransomware. So what? Now what? What do we do? If we know these things, what do we do about them? And so I think it'd be good to start in this initial access and go through. And I have my own notes, and I'm sure you'll interject, questions and thoughts as well. But you're kind of going through this stuff we have over here. Oh, you can see my mouse over here on the left hand side of the screen. What are the things we do to prevent these different precursors? So I'm going to start with phishing, and what are some of the things people do successfully to prevent phishing? So when we think about phishing, and remember, we talked last time that, 2 types of emails that come through, and, sometimes we think we are a little imprecise that maybe all malicious email is phishing and all phishing is malicious email. But to get specific, this kind of phishing, what we're phishing for is to get people to give us valid credentials. And this could be as low tech as, hey, please email me your password.
Or it's not always email though. There's so many other communication tools. We just had an issue where it was like, hey, I got on a support Slack channel and was like, I lost my MFA for my phone. Can you help me? Yada, yada, yada. Right. That's a phishing attack.
Here's your new code. Here's your new,
Yeah.
I reset your password for you. Here's the new one. Yeah.
Right.
Or that could be a text message, or heck, it could be Facebook Messenger. It could be Signal. It could be, any sort of trusted communication platform. We're even seeing this is still a bit of a movie plot kind of thing, but I've been following the research around the deep fake technologies, and
good point.
And there are actual cases where that phishing phone call was. There's at least one case we're aware of where somebody modeled out, created a.
I'm actually a deep fake of Aaron phishing you.
Right now this is
an elaborate scheme to get your O365 password.
I'll go ahead and provide that right now. But as crazy as that is, we now have recorded examples of people calling up, impersonating the chief financial officer and saying, not credentials in this case, but saying, hey, do this thing for me. It's not
it's not really new. Like, people are always finding new tactics to do it. I mean, we had this even prior to password stealing, where like people would just submit invoices to large organizations, and a lot of times they would just pay them.
They just get paid $500, $5,000,
whatever. Yeah,
it takes too long to
it's all along those lines.
Just pay it. Yeah, exactly. So, so knowing that this phishing is one of the vectors, starting with email phishing, there's a lot of work and attempts around different. We tend to not talk about specific commercial products in this thing, but there are a lot of email security and specifically some sort of anti-phishing, trying to use artificial intelligence, or more specifically machine learning, to say, well, what do those phishing attempts look like? And in my experience is that they're, with varying degrees of success, some of those packages, they can catch larger, more sort of mass, large scale phishing activities in the same way we catch spam. It's sort of spam detection rules. The more targeted, one-on-one, it's your mileage may vary, and those solutions not as
once
successful.
You get to spear phishing, is what you're referring to, that becomes a little bit harder.
Absolutely.
Or a lot bit harder.
Yeah. I would say here, unfortunately, it's a human confidence kind of targeting, and it's almost unfortunate news. But I think that personally, that the human element is one of the most important elements in this space, which is you combat phishing by training people, and in particular, so we do a terrible job of training sometimes in information security. I've seen research that says, our annual security, most of the research I've seen says that our annual security training is not terribly effective at changing human behavior.
And that's a really tough thing to do, to change culture and human behavior. But how much can something like multi-factor authentication help with phishing attacks, right? Because then, like, when you have this key that's constantly changing, you can't really like give that out, or at least it only has like a limited useful life cycle.
Yeah.
Can we combat a lot of that with MFA?
I think we can. And here, so to say MFA to me doesn't, the phishing still occurs and might be coming in. And in that case, somebody still ends up being successfully stealing the password, potentially through phishing, meaning you're not necessarily preventing that activity of phishing, but where you might be preventing it is once those valid credentials are received. I kind of peg it here in this circle.
Because it puts like a time-bound component to the validity of the
correct. And even here we have to realize, as more and more people, it becomes a moving target somewhat. And so there are examples of instead of asking you for your password, as I would have traditionally in phishing, we elevate what the attacker has to do to the point of, we are seeing examples of, when I turn on various kinds of MFA. So if the MFA I'm using, for example, is a code that's emailed, a 6-digit code that's emailed or texted to me, then, in this valid credentials, I may, instead of asking for a password, or maybe in addition to asking for a password, we see attackers still persisting and saying, hey, you're going to get this code, and here's some made up reason why I need you to.
The code. Yeah.
I need the code.
There's always a way around it. It's just
correct.
You and I talk about making remote access complex, right? And it's always like balancing that out. So I have an opinion question for you.
Yeah, sure.
Are there any good reasons why someone shouldn't have MFA today?
No.
Okay. So if you don't have it, you're wrong.
That's my simple answer. You should have some MFA somewhere in your organization. And for me, one of the early ones, if you think about probably 4 or 5 years ago, where overwhelmingly people started to going from on-premise email to cloud-hosted email, either Office 365, that was the big one in corporate space, or maybe Google for their hosted email. This is just, it's just basic. It's just, if you aren't turning on MFA, and in particular, there was a time where maybe you wouldn't have it turned on premise. And so some indicator of being on premise is a factor in and of itself. I know that you're inside of the network versus remote, but remotely accessing Office 365 email, so MFA always.
When you talk about MFA, I get this impression, this sense, I don't know why, that it's a thing you turn on in a place, and that my experience is different from that. It's a thing you turn on in a place, but there are probably 10 or 50 or 500 different places that it needs to be turned on in an organization.
The reason why I, in that specific example, say a place is this: in the early days, before everybody, or before even most people had some sort of enterprise capable MFA solution, with your Office 365 came a limited Microsoft provided MFA solution that you could literally check a checkbox and turn on, and people were not checking the checkbox to turn it on.
And there are free MFA tools out there. There's no good reason not to use MFA. But one of the challenges I see, and I have a feeling we're just going to talk about this first phishing and valid credentials today, and maybe next week we'll go into password stuff.
we might be on that track.
It feels like a good thing here.
Yeah, right.
So if it's okay, can I keep you on this thread?
No, please, let's do it. Yeah. So
I'm a company, right? I'm putting myself in the shoes of, we work with a lot of, I'm going to say mid-size commercial and enterprise companies. And, we're made up of 30 years worth of technology that's been deployed in 3 to 25 mergers and acquisitions put together. If I'm an IT professional and I'm agree with you guys, which I'm sure everyone does, they always agree.
Yeah, everybody agrees with us. We're right.
We need MFA on, we've got MFA on Active Directory, because if you don't, you're wrong. How does one go about finding all of these? Make sure it's on the VPN, and make sure that it's on, my web apps and my SaaS applications, and maybe in my OT networks, or how do people? Are there tools? Are there approaches to finding? Great, 1 out of 50 is done. How do I know how many I have and where I should apply it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And before I answer your question, I'm going to say it's easy for a guy like me or you to say MFA is the right answer. If you're not doing MFA, you're wrong. Fix it. And I believe in the truth of that. I also know enterprisey. Is that a word? Enterprisey.
I think so.
Across the board, MFA is not a magic wand. It's just not. It's not a magic wand you wave and suddenly everything's, connected to MFA.
Magically delicious.
Magically, and there's no friction to the users, and there are no business problems with that. There are. It's a thing you have to do, like many things in security. Good security takes a little bit away from the usability of things. But again, given the stakes, we're living in a world, this valid credentials problem, we need good, solid MFA, the more modern solutions. There are times and places for, text message or email codes, but more and more, some sort of solution that's either a time-bound code like the Google auth and, similar kinds of solution, or a push approach where I have an app on my phone where I click and say, yes, that's me logging in. You gotta do those things. And then in terms of, okay, there's a lot of work to do there. I have all these different applications.
Are there discovery tools? Like how does one actually discover all that stuff?
Yeah, and I think you and I both know there are all sorts of discovery tools out there. I haven't found there to be a sort of comprehensive industry opinion on how do people do that. People do it in all sorts of different ways. In most of my career, I've had to do it. We did it with human effort, and it's going out and inventorying. It's inventory practices. It's going out and saying, what are all the applications we use in our organization? And you build that list. You build that list imperfectly.
Are you speaking of digital cartography?
Digital cartography, yeah. But in my career, I've been doing this for very specific efforts around that, and not just the good hygiene, but no, I actually need to know the applications in my organization and what they do. Some of that you can do with network scanning. Some of that, that's one kind of approach, or network flow. There's certainly there are different kinds of tools that larger organizations can buy. But if nothing else, this is one of these. If you wait for perfection, if you're waiting for perfection, don't. Start with a spreadsheet if you have to.
Right.
At a hospital I worked at, we did this work. We paired up with the internal audit team, and as part of the annual, sort of risk assessment processes, we asked people, what are the essential tools you use to do your job? And we talked about, now we didn't talk about specifically, applications, but we said, what tools or solutions?
Sure.
Because then you would get cloud providers.
Then you can start to evaluate how centralized of a credentials identity and access management strategy you have.
Yeah, correct.
We're finding that it's far more decentralized than people would even like to think that it is. And I'm gonna challenge you for a minute. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Are you okay with that?
No, never. Yes, please.
Robust enough today on it. Okay, so everything you've talked about so far is two-factor authentication for what we call a person entity.
Yeah.
My phone, I'm gonna bloop 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 bleep pew, and it's gonna.
I think I know where you're going with this.
And I get it. You corporate IT people are super cool and whatnot and everything, but there's this whole world of technology that people don't interact with. We call them non-person entities.
Right.
That elevator that goes up and down, that has a smart controller in it, that's on the network, that has credentials, that has remote access, that is critical infrastructure. What you got, bro? These things kind of these concepts fall apart a little bit for me there.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Correct. Okay. So it's not just me, right?
No, it's not just you. We're all, it seems like, especially corporate IT, and you and I talk about this a lot. We're really, talk about a topic we could go have 10 more conversations, and I think we've already had one or two in this series. But the non-person entity, let's go ahead and today contain it to corporate IT.
Okay.
I'm gonna live in my IT
we're just
ivory tower for a little while, and we're gonna ignore the 50 billion non-IT smart devices.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to send out an email to threat actors this afternoon and be like, just so you know, we decided that IT and OT is not appropriate for you to attack.
It's off bounds. It's out of scope.
Out of bounds. Not cool, guys.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds like a good plan. I'll get right on that.
Correct. Yes. Although, and here again, I'm going to rationalize like a corporate IT guy. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm. Please do.
Yeah. Here, I'm going to put on my serious face. Put on a straight face.
Brian, tell me, what's your approach?
The crown jewels are inside of the corporate IT world. So it's. I tried.
I hear what you're saying. Like from a data perspective, yeah. But when we're talking about malware, I'm not sure that the data exfiltration is the point. Now, we did talk about that is over there, right? Like, exfiltrate data. That's a measure. But this whole encrypt data, destroy backup things, I'm pretty sure like the whole southern part of the United States would disagree with you about the crown jewels when it comes to this pipeline outage that they had earlier this year.
Yeah, except I'm with you, except I do believe that the pipeline outage was an IT outage, meaning I believe from what I've read, and I could be wrong, I dug into that one somewhat, but I think the primary, the point of impact of that attack was on an IT.
It was on an IT-like asset deployed outside of the confines and management of IT.
Okay, so secret sauce that I'm unaware of on that one, but so anywho, yeah, exactly.
Okay, so continue with your book report.
Wherever I was, valid credentials and MFA, that's a key. I think in terms of any large project like that is going to have as one of its precursors to being successful, a good application inventory, and by good, risk prioritized, what's the value of the assets that we're protecting, how many people use it, those sorts of things. And
so like a really solid inventory and as-built documentation of hardware, software, data assets, and the dependencies between them.
Correct. Okay. Yep. Just that. I mean,
just how hard? That. Oh, that's
how hard. Cool. How hard could that possibly?
I'm not even sure what I'll do with the rest of my time after.
How hard could that possibly be? Can I? If we're well, I'll finish the thought, and then I'm going to tell a story, and that might be. That might be. That might finish us out for this one. And
I like it.
We'll have completed 2 boxes.
This has been a good one.
Yeah. So you've got to do that risk tiered application inventory, and then you go tackle your MFA. That's another word I made up today. You apply MFA, multi-factor authentication, in one of a couple or ways of either application by application. There are also some approaches, and I kind of like this, although we don't unfortunately see a ton of it yet in corporate IT spaces that I've seen. So anyway, there's an approach where we, for every single application, go and hardwire that application for multi-factor auth.
Yeah, it's kind of a lot of work.
Yeah, or there are approaches where we separate user computing out. We segregate or separate that environment out from the application environment. We don't have these commingled networks where my user computing, where every user computing workstation or device can talk directly to all the components of all of the applications, or as we say, big flat networks, where everything can talk to everything.
I get excited about network segmentation.
Yeah. But we create an approach where essentially that the user computing, we start treating more like it's just the internet, and maybe it even is just the internet. And then to get to those applications, we're using some sort of application proxy technology. And that's where we apply multi-factor, and that's where we make the decision.
It makes it cleaner.
Yeah.
So simpler. It sounds more complicated, but in the long run, it's simpler.
It's more complicated until you say, am I really going to go rewire auth for 147 different applications? And how long is that going to take me? And what Swiss Army knife of tools am I going to need? And not just tools, skills.
So you create network boundaries with a proxy between them.
Yeah.
And at the point of the proxy, we apply these security practices.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Did you just come up with that?
No.
Oh, okay. That's good.
So I'm going to tell a story about
I'm
going to tell a story about application inventory. And this is going back, and there was no secret sauce technology involved in this. This was at a healthcare organization I worked at years and years and years ago. And we started a process of inventorying applications. And I kind of described, we looked around at tools to do it and realized we didn't have it. And so instead of just giving up, we went and started with a spreadsheet and evolved it over time. But
were there clipboards involved in this?
No, but I do like to use clipboard examples. I said my unreasonable ask to the people who worked in my organization was, I don't care if we have to get a clipboard and a yellow legal pad. Like, we're going to start an inventory.
Make this happen.
Yeah. Yep. I don't care if we have to go totally old school. So we started doing that, and we did as a 2-part survey. We asked just basic questions, like, what are the solutions you use in each of your business processes? And we reached out to the people who ran each of the major functions in the organization to say, what are the technology solutions that you use to run your business? And we do that a couple of times a year, and we keep doing it. And so the first time we did it was probably 65% accurate. And then the next year it was we added more. And as we had anytime we had a conversation with a department, somebody brought up some new thing we never heard of, like, is that in our little database? And we kept adding it to it.
Got it.
And then we didn't have NIST CSF back then. And so we kind of invented our own risk scoring methodology for how much data do you have?
What kind of data? How important is it to the business?
So we just did some, we want to have some risk quantification though. So we did some basic math and made up, kind of made up. It was based on something, but kind of made up, and did this risk scoring system. So I had a person who worked for me whose job it was to run that process of running the inventory of the different, applications or solutions in the organization. And the first time we kind of had hundreds and hundreds of these, and we went and turned the crank and did the risk calculation. She came into my office one day and said, we ran our risk assessment process, and I've identified the riskiest application in the organization. And I'm going to, I don't know what's going on with that today, years later, so I'm going to make up a fake name. And so this application was called the Foo Bunny application. So she said, it's made up, right? The Foo Bunny application is the riskiest application in our organization. And I said, there's something wrong with our methodology. She said, why is that? Because I've never heard of the Foo Bunny application. How could it be our risky? I've never heard of that. How is that not, that's not right? That's possible. And she just sat there looking at me and said, say that again and think about it. It is our riskiest application.
Because you don't know about it.
Because you've never heard of it. But
it's your unknown.
Let me tell you a couple of things. No. Let me tell you a couple of things about this application. It's not in our data center. It's sitting on a computer under somebody's desk.
Yep.
It processes credit cards.
And I think we probably all have a story like that.
Yeah.
Here's and this, I think we're at time here. So
we're at time, but we can go a little on.
This is where I would challenge everybody is, we're pretty confident that you know how to handle your known unknowns, right? How do you go, those systems you know about that are not part of MFA yet, there's a clear path to that. what we're interested in or helping you with or chat with us are, what are your unknown unknowns? What are these applications that you don't know about that are vulnerable to phishing attacks, that are vulnerable to compromise of valid credentials? And how do you find those? And I think that's the challenge I would lay out for you is what is your strategy to that?
Well,
and spend some time answering
and
that.
I'm going to add just one more thing and bring back something you said, which is, and if you're working in traditional IT and you have a manufacturing component of what you do, or you work in healthcare, or you work at, your unknown unknowns are probably not inside of your data center. It's probably some dynamic, some component of the business that is cloud-based, or is manufacturing OT, or is healthcare OT, or is
and probably represents an attack surface that vastly outweighs the attack surface of what is part of your known environment.
Yeah, you're not a. So with that happy
That's
thought,
good stuff, man.
Yeah, with that happy thought, rest easy, kids. Until next week. I think
we'll just continue this. We'll keep digging into these circles and what do we do and what does it mean to us.
Yeah, I agree. This is a good one. Good talk. Talk to you next time.
Man. Yep. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.